Okay, so we finally have a full draw for the Rugby World Cup in 2027, and we probably also have a confirmed first game. New Zealand taking on Australia will be my guess for the first game after having been drawn in that. Who would have guessed it? Who would have thought? Everybody spoke about the fact that that would potentially be a very likely draw, and it has happened. New Zealand against Australia in Pool A. They will be joined by Chile and Hong Kong. South African fans, keep an eye out for Pool B, because that is where we have been drawn with Italy, Georgia, and Romania. It's not a terrible pool. It's one of the harder ones, I reckon, to be honest. I think that, obviously we don't quite know where Italy's going to be in the next World Cup. Rassie Erasmus says that they're a team on the rise and they expect them to be very tough. Georgia are a team that we know are physical, but have kind of sometimes, been a bit up and down with regards to sort of the consistency of performances. They've definitely been building the last few years, but maybe haven't been able to completely kick on to the extent where they've been able to sort of push for Six Nations spots. But they could yet be quite a tricky fixture. Romania should, in theory, be fairly straightforward. But again, you never know. You're all sort of guessing when it comes to these. Pool C is Argentina, Fiji, Spain, and Canada. It could be this could be one of the ones where maybe if Argentina aren't quite at their best, Fiji might be able to cause a bit of an upset. Argentina are the lowest ranked side were the lowest ranked side in Band 1. So that could be one of the pools where maybe there's a spot up for grabs. And Pool D, Ireland, Scotland, Uruguay, Portugal, it should be pretty straightforward. I mean, I don't really see how that. Maybe Portugal being Uruguay is the potential upset there. I don't see a Portugal or Uruguay beating Scotland. And maybe I'm very wrong. Maybe it could potentially happen, but I just don't really see it. And Pool E will then be France, Japan, USA, Samoa. Pretty straightforward, if you ask me, from a draw point of view. I think that, I think that it should be relatively comfortable. I think that we should be able to... I think that France will be pretty straightforward from there. Maybe if Samoa can get themselves sorted in the next 2 years, they could be a potential upset against Japan. And then Pool F, for me, the easiest group by quite a long mile: England, Wales, Tonga, Zimbabwe. Unless Wales really up the ante in the next couple of years, I don't see that being particularly difficult. So those are the pools that have been drawn. The big question now is kind of what it looks like with regards to the bracket. So, and kind of what this means from a South African perspective. So let's go look at the bracket, shall we? And kind of see what the likely sort of quarterfinals, semifinals are. So the big problem with us is that we are now likely to play against New Zealand or Australia in the quarterfinals. So we've got a very difficult path, because we are hopefully going to be the Pool B winners, ideally, and we'll play the winners of Pool A and whoever wins in Pool C. So we do get a very straightforward round of 16, but then Australia or New Zealand likely hold for us in quarterfinals. Then from a semifinals point of view, if you look at Pool E winner, Pool E being France, potentially France or Japan, that could potentially be the semifinal, or else it'll be a runner-up of Pool C, which could be a Fiji, for example. Pool F runner-up, which could be a Wales, or a Pool D runner-up, which could be a Scotland. So you're looking at Scotland, Wales, France, Fiji, potentially in the semifinals. But at this stage, we could have New Zealand in the quarterfinals, we could have France in the semifinals, and then a final against an England or the likes of that. So it's not a particularly easy route for either Australia, New Zealand, or South Africa. If you look at, for example, England, they're in Pool F, and they'll play the run-up of Pool B, so let's call it Italy. So that becomes maybe an interesting game. So a tougher game for England, for example. However, they will play the runner of Pool A, which could be Australia, and the runner of Pool E, which could be like a Japan in things. So they, for example, could play against a Italy, then a Japan, or a Pool E, and Pool F is Pool A runner or in Italy, for example, in the quarterfinals, and only meet a Band 1 side in the forms of probably likely, an Ireland in the semifinals. Ireland, for example, will likely play against your Pool C winner so that you'd like to play against, for example, Argentina in the quarterfinals or Fiji in the quarterfinals, and then potentially England in the semifinals. So everybody spoke about the fact that maybe this will be the final, the way that Ireland can get a potential quarterfinal. Well, it's set up in a way that they definitely could, because that's how this whole sort of situation stands at the moment with regards to kind of the bracket and the likes of that. So it's not an easy path. It is going to be a tricky path for the Boks. Because whilst maybe our round of 16 should be relatively straightforward, when you think it's going to be the Pool DEF best third. So you're now looking at Pool DEF. So you're looking at best third. At this stage, you're looking at Uruguay, USA, or Tonga. That could potentially be our round of 16 game, which, in all honesty, is another pool game. But then come quarterfinals, Australia or New Zealand likely to be our opponents there. Semi-finals likely to be France. And then final likely to be an Ireland or an England or an Argentina, or a who am I missing? Or those are kind of your big names. Ireland, we'll meet France in semi-finals. So England, Ireland, Argentina. That's another side of the bracket. Assuming this all goes kind of the way that we kind of anticipate, which is probably quite likely, in all honesty. I think that. Again, I think the pool system over here should be a case of seedings. There should be seedings. And that's something I just mentioned. This is what really frustrates me. The fact is that your number 1 and 2 ranked side are not only on the same side of the bracket, but at this stage could be in the quarterfinal. So your number 1 versus 4 could be knocked out in the quarterfinal at this stage and not reach the semi-finals. And that's, I think, the frustrating, is that there should be seedings with this. So you should make sure that New Zealand and South Africa don't appear on either side of this bracket. You want to see a New Zealand somewhere else, so we don't get a situation where New Zealand now is going to play South Africa in the quarterfinals. That is a potential World Cup final. I mean, you don't want to be in a situation right now where it's going to be New Zealand versus South Africa in the quarterfinals. Right now, France are ranked 5th, and that could potentially be your semi-final opponent, and then you could play against an Ireland or an England who are 2nd and 3rd in the finals. So obviously we don't know what the ranks are going to be like by the time we get there, but that's kind of the frustration, in that there's just a lot of us is potentially could be knocked out by the time we get to sort of semi-finals and finals. And Tyler says Springboks to lose to Italy to get an easier run to the final. Well, I think that's the frustrating part, because I wouldn't say it's necessarily easier, but you lose to Italy and we come 2nd, for example, we'll take on the Pool F Pool F winner, which is England. So it's not really much easier. But if you beat England in that quarterfinal, for example, your semi-final will be against your Pool A runner-up, which could be in Australia, and your Pool E runner-up, which is probably Japan. So I suppose, do you want a more difficult game in the quarterfinal or the semi-final? I suppose we almost sort of had the banana peel of England in that we almost sort of slipped up in the semi. But it's not ideal. But what do you think of the draw, and what do you think of this format now looking at the bracket?